Explore the history, relationships, expertise, and data that go into ensuring Stine growers get maximum yield potential. This is the Stine Seedcast. Here's your host, David Thompson.
And welcome to the Stine Seedcast. I'm your host, David Thompson, National Marketing and Sales Director for Stine Seed Company. We've got another great episode lined up with special guests, expert insights, and discussion on everything you need to know about maximizing yield potential. On today's episode, our special guest is Clint Bounds, General Manager of Sales for Stine Seed Company. Welcome to the show, Clint.
Thanks for having me, David.
So today we're here to learn about Clint's background, his path to Stine, the many roles he's played while he's been with Stine, and how he supports our sales team members and their customers. So let's get started. First of all, tell us a little bit about your background.
Okay, I grew up in a small town on a farm in Forest, Illinois, in central Illinois. My dad at that time, growing up, probably had an 800 to 1,200 acre farm. It's growing since then, but grew up there on a farm, went to school, Prairie Central High School, and played some sports, did FFA, all that fun stuff while growing up there. So
good. And so where is that relative to the hot spots in Illinois? Where is that?
Yeah, just north of Bloomington, Illinois.
Okay.
About a half hour and about 2 hours south of Chicago.
All right.
So, yeah.
Right in the heart of farm country there.
Yeah. There's some pretty good farm ground right in there. Some of the best in the nation. So we can raise some really good crops in that area. So.
Absolutely. So where'd you go after you left home?
So when I graduated high school, I went to Joliet Junior College for 2 years. Wasn't a big school kid. Didn't like school that much. And I thought, my parents said, you're going to school. You're going to go to college. You're going to do something besides just work. So my plan was to go there for 2 years and get the heck out of school and go to work. Well, when at Joliet Junior College, part of the degree was to do an internship for 1 semester. And it was a really good experience. So I actually ran a floater and did some spraying for FS there in central Illinois. Did that for a while and got a lot of experience there, but ran into understanding how many hours you have to work when you're in the retail business. Sure. Later on, I would spend some more time in retail, but realized after a while I probably want to go on to 4 years because I didn't know if I wanted to do that for a long time. So I went on to Illinois State University, got my degree there, 1998, I believe. And did several internships, worked for DuPont, AgriGold, and FS during that time, gained a lot of experience. And growing up, not only having the internships, but one thing that really helped me with the seed business is growing up, my dad was actually a dealer, a seed dealer himself. And, a lot of times, we'd have work to do on the farm, and I'd ask Dad, hey, can I ride with you? To get me out of work or for that day. And so I'd ride with him. And, I actually learned a lot from him. He was actually a pretty good salesman. He sold a lot of seed. And it was a big part, especially being a smaller farmer growing up, that was a big part of his income, was selling seeds. So I did that and learned a lot from him. So between doing that and a lot of the internships I had, I learned a lot through college.
And that brings up a great point, because one of the things that's in our industry that's so neat is there's a great history of farmer dealers. I mean, obviously in our business, dealers come in all shapes and sizes, but farmer dealers are really unique, and they have their own kind of pulse on the business. But
yes.
that's kind of neat that you grew up that way. So probably fond memories of seed days and delivering seed and plot days and all that good stuff.
Yeah. And that's changed a lot. You don't see that as much anymore, but a lot of fun days. Dad would have a big plot day, and always, growing up in the country, you're not in the city, that's something you really look forward to. Everybody were from around town coming in, and even if they didn't buy seed, they came to the plot day and had a lot of fun. So it was neat.
Yeah, you live out in the country. The social calendar is a little different than it is in town.
Yes, it is. A little bit. There's a lot of things you find to do to entertain yourself out in the country. So, yeah.
Okay, so you get out of school, and then where to from there?
Yeah, so I started working in retail at Randolph Ag Service in Hayworth, Illinois, just south of Bloomington. When I had an internship with DuPont, I actually got to know the people at Randolph Ag Service. I did some scouting for them because they did a lot of DuPont business. So I went to work for them for a couple years and learned a lot. Did a lot of things there, anything from mixing chemicals, scouting fields. They hired me on as a salesman, but I think anybody that's been in retail, any title you want, you're going to do anything. And that included pressure washing floaters and trucks when they bring them in at night. But, there's times I thought, man, I got a degree for this. And that work taught me a lot and made me really thankful for like the things I do today. And it was a great experience. I actually became a Stine dealer while I was there at Randolph Ag Service. One day, this old guy named Kevin Ryan, who's down in Arkansas for Stine right now, he came walking in the door and wanted to know if someone wanted to sell Stine seed there, and so they volunteered me to do that. But it was a good experience.
So that was your first interaction to Stine. That was Kevin Ryan.
That was Kevin came in, so he signed me up, and I took over the seed business there, and we sold Stine. And at the time, they already had an Asgrow and Garst dealership there as well. Ended up selling more Stine, liked the people better, and honestly, the products were better. They were good, so we sold a lot of Stine. But the second visit, Kevin Ryan came with a couple signs and posts and said, if you want to be a seed dealer, you're going to have to learn what to do and how to do it right. And so he gave me some signs and posts and told me to go put them up at a plot. So I don't think he wanted to do it, but yeah. So
some free labor there.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Yeah. So, but no, it was good. I went around and worked with Kevin. We rode together and go see some farmers, and we still laugh about it to this day. So it was good.
So what was the presence of Stine seed in that particular area where you were working at that time?
Yeah. Wasn't a huge market share there at all. But, everybody kind of knew Stine's name in soybeans. And at that time, Myron Stine was the regional manager in that area, and he was building that up, hiring ISRs to build up that market share, and was doing a good job at that. But it's just like anything else, you can have the best product in the world, but you got to go see the people. You got to go, especially farmers. So at that time, the market share wasn't real big, but we were just coming on with some good product. About that time was around Roundup Ready was starting to get big. And so the soybean sales were definitely going up at that time.
So in the case of Randolph Ag, you'd say getting out, talking to those customers, drove the sales of Stine at that time?
Yeah. Oh, definitely. Yeah. And so my job was to not really, my job was to sell Stine to anybody I could, but it was also to try to get business for Randolph with new fertilizer and chemical business with new customers that weren't doing business with us. So I learned how to cold call was a big part of what I learned there. And while doing that, I was selling Stine, and Stine helped us get in the door to later on sell some growers some, fertilizers, chemicals, whatever that might be. But it was just kind of a way for us to get in the door, and it was a good way because people enjoyed the product and it did well, and it wasn't you weren't worried about how the soybeans were going to do. And once you did that and a customer was happy with the product you sold them, that was a good way for you to build that trust and build that relationship with that grower.
So in some of the cases, you were talking to existing customers who were already purchasing from the retailer. Sometimes it was going out talking to new customers.
Yeah. And
you just said cold calling, was important. I think that's a tripping point for a lot of folks. Doesn't matter the industry. Cold calling is a challenge for people. I mean, how did you overcome that?
Yeah, well, honestly, when I was, in the 2 years I was in retail, it was still difficult for me, to be honest with you. I mean, and I had other things I could do. And some days when I didn't feel like prospecting, I'm going to go scout, or I'm going to go clean up the shop or do some other things or whatever that is. that day. But really, when I started with Stine as an ISR, and I made that commitment to jump into an area with very, very low market share, I had no choice. If I was going to take that job, I knew I had to do that or don't take the job, right? And so starting out with Myron as my boss, that's really where I learned to prospect and actually learned to enjoy it and be successful at it.
So as you alluded to right there, so at a certain point, you decided to join Stine as a sales representative.
Yeah.
So tell me about that decision.
Yeah. So I joined Stine as an ISR in 2000. And like I said, two things guided me in that direction. One was the product did really well. And at that time, mostly what we were selling is soybeans, especially with that dealership. The product did well. So selling something that people enjoy, or they had success with, that made it more fun. The other thing was the people that I worked with. So Kevin Ryan was the DSM for a while, or the ISR, and then he moved on to agronomist role. And then Mike Musselman took over. Well, I'm still friends with Mike to this day. And then Kevin Burleymeyer came on as an agronomist as well. So Kevin stopped by a lot, to talk a little, BS a little bit, and we got to be pretty good friends. And working with Mike, I just enjoyed the people, and really hadn't met Myron yet. And so they told Myron, they said, "Man, you should give this guy a call. We got an opening up where I used to live, up north a little bit in Livingston County. Should give him a call." So we met. Actually met a couple of times. It took him a couple of times to get me to jump on, in his independent contractor role. So it was a little bit different. So, but finally I jumped on, and I'm glad I did.
So what sealed the deal for you?
Well, a couple things. One is I wasn't going to miss being in retail and the hours I had to spend doing that job. Like I said, I learned a lot, and it was great, and I'm glad I did it. But the hours were crazy. At that time, I had two young little kids, 2 and 5, and was not seeing them very much. I was gone a lot. So this would give me a little bit more freedom to set my hours and do what I wanted. All at the same time, I knew I'd have to be disciplined and do the right things. So that was a big part of it. And Myron, just sitting down with him, knowing that he would be the main person that I'd work with, got along with him right from the beginning. Thought, man, there's some really good people. So, just the culture seemed like a really good culture to work with. So
it's good.
Yep.
Starting out as a sales rep in that territory, you said the market share was relatively low. So I think it sounded like from the beginning you kind of made a decision that prospecting was going to be, how you were going to grow that territory, right?
Yeah.
So tell me about the first couple of years there.
Yeah. So at that time, to have a deficit your first year or 2 or 3 with Stine was pretty common. I mean, at that time I was making 85 cents a unit on beans, and now, look what it is now, and that's awesome. So that's changed a lot. So one of the things that Myron and his boss at the time put together for me, and I think it was the first deficit reduction program ever developed in the company. You'd have to ask Myron, but I'm pretty sure it was. But they put together a program for me that if I averaged 6 calls a day, they'd wipe out a third of my deficit at the end of the first year. If I called on 7 people a day, they'd wipe out 2/3, and then if I averaged 8 calls a day, they'd wipe out 100%. I thought, cool, I'm gonna make 8 calls a day and wipe this thing out. And I found out that was really tough to get that done, but I really wanted to wipe out my deficit. I ended up the first year averaging 7.2. And I thought, man, surely, 7.2, they'll bump that up to 8. And they didn't. They rounded it down to 7. But I did that, and I credit Myron for really pushing me and staying on me. I documented everything, and at that time I was 26, 27 years old, and wet behind the ears and things. But I didn't know any better. I just knew I got to get out there, and I just got to knock on doors. And So, my goal was to try to get 8 done per day. And as I continued to do that, you got to where you're really used to doing it, and the hesitation to pull into a driver's barnyard or into a fertilizer plant or a grain elevator was fairly easy. It's just like anything else. You practice, and I tell people that all the time. You got to do that. The more you do it, the better you get at it, and you know how to answer questions. So that's how that worked. And the territory I took over had 50 bags of corn and 5,000 bags of soybeans in it when I took that over. So I prospecting, I had no choice. I had to do that to grow the business. And at that time, we did not sell. You could sell direct, but it had to go through a dealer. Sure. So you only had dealers to set up. So my main focus was talking to growers, and then also trying to go into ag retail. I went into grain elevators, farmer dealers. If I saw a farmer sign at the end of the lane for being a dealer, that was a green light. Get in there, talk to that person. So I actually, through that prospecting, I ended up signing on 4 different FS member companies, and within those, each of those had 8 to 10 dealers. But if you count all those and all the other dealers, I signed up 50, 60 dealers in my area. Now, they all didn't work out, but it was worth a shot. So I had a lot of success and did that. And the main reason why is because, that first year, which I tell everybody, that's key. You got to get out there first year and let everybody know who you are, and let them know your name. And soon as you have success, and I've told other people this too, pretty soon they start hunting you down, the other companies, and they want what you've got. But that's a whole nother story. But yeah.
So we're going to talk about some of the other roles you've had, but I guess before we leave the ISR side, I mean, is there anything that sticks out in your mind when you think about, those first couple of years, your first tour of duty with Stine? Is there any memory you have or certain thing that sticks out in your head?
Well, yeah, lots of things. Some of them I can't tell you, but probably one of the craziest things, and I want to tell this story mostly so the ISRs can understand that when they have bad days and they're going through some tough times, I know how they feel. And this situation was crazy. So this was, almost this time of the year, right before Memorial Day weekend. I was going to look at a field. These farmers called, and the dealers called me, actually said, "Hey, we got these farmers. They have some field of your beans. They think they need to replant. They want to start replanting right now." I said, "Well, I've got to get over there and I got to check it out and make sure it's okay, and then go get you the soybeans." Well, I got to the field, and they're standing there, and they've got a truck full of a competitor's soybeans. That was the quickest they could get. And the dealer that was selling for me, they didn't sell a whole lot of Stine. They were trying to just get started, and they sold another competitor. So they had those beans available.
Oh, okay.
So I would have had to go an hour to go get these Stine beans to replant with. Well, anyway, long story short, I told them, "Hey, you need to wait." I said, "You got some beans just sprouting in the ground here. I think when you come back Monday or after Memorial Day, you're not going to have to replant this field." He blew up on me, him and his son. He got upset. They wanted to park that planter and be done planting before Memorial Day. And I told him, I said, "Man, guys, I've got to do this. I can go get the beans. It's an hour away." He had a few choice words for me and proceeded to take the soybeans he had. Thank God it was a competitor soybeans, but it had the soybeans he had on the bed of the truck and started throwing them at me. And told me to get the blank out of here.
Oh no!
And that was the first and really the last experience I had like that. It was crazy. And I remember I was shaking because I was, like I said, at 25, 26 years old. I'm shaking. I call Myron up, and Myron's like, "You don't need those guys as a customer. You don't have to go back there." So I bring our agronomist Kevin Burlingmeyer back on Tuesday, and he says, "Yeah, you guys," and they went ahead and replanted. But he said, "Man, you guys didn't need to replant." But yeah, so it was just kind of a crazy deal. That was one of the craziest, but you always, you knock on doors and you run into situations where people, you're calling on a guy, you just know his names. Well, he's not around anymore, and stuff like that. But and dogs chasing you around, stuff like that. But we all deal with that if you do it enough. So
great stuff. Well, so during that time, you must have done something right, because at a point you got asked to take on a regional leadership role in the company. So describe a bit of what that role, the territory that was.
Yeah, at that time, we had, so I actually took over Myron's region, and he moved up and was moving out to Iowa, I think, at that time. At that time, like I said, we had 5 regions, so I had all of Illinois and Wisconsin. And now that's probably 6 or 7 regions right now. But I had all that, and I think I had around 15 ISRs at that time, and so managed those guys. But just spent, biggest part of my job was obviously servicing those ISRs, making sure they had what they needed, taking care of issues they had. But the biggest part was taking what I learned and what I did and trying to pass that on to them. And and the best thing I could do is go out and ride with them and spend time with them. And I think as a leader or a manager like that, if you want your people to follow you, you want to be a leader, you have to earn that respect. And a lot of that is doing the things that you ask them to do, whether that's, if they're shipping, you help them ship, delivering seed, putting in plots, prospecting, calling on dealers, all those things. You need to get out there and do that stuff. And I have a hard time standing in front of people and telling them they need to do this or that when I haven't done it myself. And I'm not saying you have to have that complete job. It's just get out there with them and do that so you understand it. Put up signs with them, all that stuff. So.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I did a lot of that. I just spent a lot of time out with them and building a relationship with them. And like I said, when you do that and you ask them to do better and you ask them to change things and do things to help them grow their business, I think when you've done that for them, they have a little bit more respect and they listen to you.
So when you went from, one sales district to now, a regional leader covering, 2 states, I assume that your universe gets expanded a little bit.
Oh, yeah.
We all think ag is kind of homogeneous, right? It's the same wherever, but it's probably not.
No.
Especially that area, north to south. That's
Absolutely.
a pretty interesting part of the world.
It's long.
Things you learned, anything sticks out in your mind?
Yeah, Illinois at that time, that's, now it's definitely different. But in Illinois, you go from the south all the way to the north, it's like a whole different state. The way they farm and when they can get in and the soil types, if it rains, the amount of time they can get in to plant compared to where I grew up. Like I said before, when we started, there's pretty good soil types there. So you gotta really be pretty bad farmer to screw up right there. But yeah, and then you get up into Wisconsin, rolling hills, and you go call on a farmer and he says, I'll give you 100% of my business. That could be 100 bags of beans. Yeah. Where in central Illinois, that's probably a couple thousand or 1,000 at least, So
next chapter, you kind of moved into a leadership role as the Eastern Sales Director, and then that kind of led into actually becoming the company's first director of training.
Right.
So a lot of the things that you talked about here are things that I think the company saw value in and saying, hey, we want to try to replicate some of what Clint's been doing on a larger scale. I mean, is that kind of the idea?
Yeah, I think so. One of the things that, especially on a regional level, that we did that I started doing was actually the business plans and doing the territory checks where we'd meet quite a bit throughout the year, and obviously has spread out throughout the company. But I remember, Myron coming to me and saying, hey, I think we need to start a training program. And it was more, at that time, it wasn't all about just, teaching people how to sell so much. It was just our policies and procedures and programs and how to do things right. Sure. And that's a big part of the business. And now we have a lot of people that can help us with that. Renee does, and her staff does a lot with that. But it was all about that. And I remember talking to Myron thinking, I don't know how long I want to do this, but I wouldn't mind trying to take over this role, just because, I don't know everything, and I'm not an expert on everything, but I've done some things right, but I've done a lot of things the wrong way and learned that way. And I think I can help people and teach them. And when I talk to them about the different policies, procedure programs, and selling and things, I can go back and relate to what I've been through. So I did that for 2 years, and it was successful, and people liked it, I think. And it just got to the point where, I was ready to do something different, and we knew somebody within the company that kind of had interest in doing that and doing more on actually sales training part of it as well, but was ready to kind of move on from there after a couple of years anyway. So.
Yeah, good.
Yeah,
good. And then, so from there, you assumed the role you have now. Is that right?
Yep.
General manager.
Yep.
So talk a little bit about the organization as it sits today in terms of size and scope of the team that you oversee on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah. So today we have, give or take on the week, it is, but around 250 ISRs currently active in the company. And last year we added on 60 new ISR districts just last year. And the year before it was 40, 50, whatever, and added some the year before that as well. Ever since I think it was 2014, we've continued to add ISRs. So we're growing quite a bit there. 10 years ago, we had around 70, 80, David, I think it was, ISRs. So we've grown a lot there. Last year, we added 9 more regions, which has put us at 34 new regions. And then we added Jason Green for the South last year, which gave us our 4th division. So we have 4 divisions that we work with, and 4 divisional managers that I work with pretty much every day. So.
Yeah. So in terms of the past decade, I mean, that's a significant amount of growth when you go from 70 or so sales territories to 250.
Yeah.
And then, 10 regions or whatever up to 34. So with that comes complexity, but it's been a fun ride, and it's also kind of neat to see just the steady, mostly steady, sometimes unsteady growth of the organization.
Yeah.
I mean, it's been really fun to watch as the organization has developed, and you've done a really good job of managing that. So since you've had such a long period of time within the organization, I guess my question is, what are some of the things that you see about the sales side of our organization that are still the same as they were when you came on board?
Sure. Well, I think one of the biggest things is the thing that we had when I first started and that we've got now is an awesome story to tell about Stine Seed Company and how different we are, and the breeding programs that we have to offer. We're an independent soybean company. So that's a big part of that.
It's great. I mean, so many industries, it doesn't matter what industry you're in, but relationships matter. But I think from what you've talked about today, I'm thinking, it strikes me that ag is a small world, right? Mm-hmm. And farmers have a lot to worry about. The last thing they want to worry about is something that they can try to not worry about, right? So when it comes to seed, they're looking for an advisor, and looking for somebody they can trust, and that's why whether that's the guy at the co-op, whether that's the retailer, whether that's their Stine rep, they kind of need that help to get them through because they have plenty of other things that they can spend their time trying to decode and worry about. Seed doesn't have to be one of them, and as time goes on, that's a pretty valuable role, I think, in the seed business. Yeah,
trust is huge, and it takes a long time to build that up. You just don't call on a customer once, sell them seed, and you got that, and especially to maintain that. And we always talk about prospecting and getting new people, but taking care of your current customers and keeping them is huge to do that. But so it's important.
So when you talk to farmers, what do you want them to know about Stine Seed Company, this company that you work for?
I think it's important for growers to know that, we're one of the few companies out there that have breeding and are working to develop better products for the farmer every day. And when a farmer buys Stine, they're investing into that. And that's something that not every company can offer. So I think that's important. I think it's important for them to know that service and taking care of them and building that trust like we just talked about is important. And that's on the forefront of the things that we talk about on a management team, is what can we do to make sure that we're taking care of the customer. We can sell them the best seed on earth, but if we're not servicing them right, that relationship's not there. If there is a problem, every company deals with that. We're going to deal with that. Unfortunately, those things happen, but we got to deal with it right.
Well, you brought up a good point, and I've heard Myron Stine say before, if you're one of the handful of companies that's doing, genetic development, doing breeding work on soybeans or corn, for example, then you're adding value to the ag industry, and you're adding value to the
Yes.
farmer's bottom line potentially. And if you're not doing genetic development and breeding work, then you're really not adding any value to the system.
Right.
You're just selling product, right?
Yep.
And so one of the things that's great about our organization is, we're one of the value-added components of row crop agriculture, I guess.
Yep.
So that's
Absolutely.
really cool.
Yep.
So you started in 2000, so you've been here 22
Yep.
years?
22 years, yep.
What's kept you here for 22 years?
Well, this is kind of crazy, but I don't know if you're in the same position as me or not, but I've had the same boss the whole time. And
I have not, by the way.
Okay. And I don't know if that's kept me here or not,
Depends on the day.
Yeah, right. That's exactly right. But that's been part of it. Just that relationship there, the type of boss he is, and dealing with him. The nice thing is with Myron, he understands. He reads in and understands people's strengths and puts them in the right positions. And I've seen him do that over the years. He's really good at that. But just that relationship's been huge, and being able to have a say in what this company's doing. I may come up with an idea and you guys tell me that's dumb. No, we're not going to do that, Clint. But to be able to be heard and express your thoughts and your ideas, and Stine's really good at that. And so that's been a big part of it. The relationships I've built over the years has been huge. And again, just the pride I have in working for a company that's doing what it's doing. And a family-owned company. It's not a corporate company. A family-owned company doing what we're doing on the breeding side of things and the research side of things, and developing what we've got. I've got a lot of pride in that, and I got a lot of confidence in that. And so a combination of those things has kept me here. I love it. And I had a headhunter call me a couple years ago, and she said, "Well, how long have you been with Stine?" And I told her it was 20 years at the time. She goes, "Oh, you're a lifer." So is that what you call us? Okay. So, but yeah, it's plan on retiring here, hopefully. So
Good. For those who've been tuning in, we've been listening to Clint Bounds, General Manager of Sales for Stine Seed Company. Clint, I really appreciate you coming in today and sharing your Stine story with us.
it's been great. Thanks for having me, David.
Well, that's our time for today. I'd like to thank our guests and our listeners for joining us on another episode of the Stine Seedcast. We'll be back soon again with more expert interviews and insights about all things Stine. To never miss an episode, subscribe to the Stine Seedcast wherever podcasts are found.
Subscribe to the Stine Seedcast wherever podcasts are found. To learn more about Stine and its elite corn and soybean genetics, visit stineseed.com. Stine has yield.